Thanks for tuning in to Raising Bosses. I'm your host, Shauna J. Ray. Here on this podcast, we discuss changing our mindsets, growing a business while raising a family. If that's what you're interested in or currently doing, please stay tuned for what we have ahead. All right, guys, thanks for joining me. I just wanted to sit here and start this new podcast off, just letting you guys know. I really appreciate that you took time out of your day to stop by, listen to my podcast. My first ever podcast. I am so happy to be on here. I want to just give a special thanks to my husband for getting me my microphone to start this podcast off right. So, again, this podcast is called Raising Bosses. Now, I want to just start off telling you why I wanted to start this podcast. I am a mother of two little girls, a wife, and, I am a creative as well, and I've just always wanted to do so much and be there for my girls. I wanted to work in something, do something that made me fulfilled as well as I enjoyed, and also allowed me to be around my children. And, the original field that I really wanted to go all out in was the fashion industry. I wanted to be a fashion designer, and I still do want to design clothes. I still do want to sew and create clothes. However, I realized, it's been a few years that I've been trying to make that happen, and I realized trying to run a business as well as work full time and be around your kids is not the easiest thing when you're having to do physical activity. So, shortly after, I just delved into different means of finding a way to make funds. I've tried a little bit of everything here and there. I'm on YouTube. If you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, it is Shauna J. Ray. I do a little bit of everything on there. Lots of natural hair, natural products, vegan eating, that sort of thing, but a little bit of everything really, no particular niche. It's also nice, again, if you want to subscribe and watch a few videos and support me there too. Thank you also. So I just kept looking into different ways. I searched all over YouTube, different means of just making secondary income, just trying to figure out something, if that makes any sense. If y'all are out there, just let me know if y'all ever felt that way as well. You don't even have to have children. Well, there was something I noticed watching all these YouTube videos. I noticed how, most of the YouTube videos that I admired the most of them didn't have children. And I'm not trying to come off in I don't know if that can be taken as jealousy or whatever. Not to say that they needed to have kids for me to continue watching them, but just I noticed that they didn't have kids. But I still wanted sort of the same thing, but with my family. I wanted to be able to travel. I wanted to be able to do things. I wanted to be able to be on my own time. So I started trying to figure out ways. I found passive income, things like that. One thing led to another. And, I just tried to dip my toe in a little bit of everything. I do find that all of these things are a little bit I have some enjoyment in them. So I do try to keep pursuing them in different ways, introducing others to them, and hopefully finding a way. And I'm still making a small but secondary income, so that's really nice. So I just wanted to figure out a way to scale it. That's basically my backstory there. And I've continued that. So I just opened up a blog. It's called Raising Bosses as well. Everything will be in the show notes if y'all have any extra questions about where to find that, raisingbosses.com. But I started a blog, and I just wanted to kind of blog about the same thing. I wanted to kind of open people up to the fact that, one, they're not alone in this. We're all searching out there. We're all trying to find our way. And you don't have to have kids to want to do that. This is just my point of view, and I know there are other people out there the same. Also, I just want to also, be comfortable with my family. And when you want to be comfortable, you have to make a nice amount of money. So I can't be comfortable until I am able to make a certain amount of money. But again, it's not all about money. It's like I said, I really want to just be with my kids. So I've just looked into many means. I really wanted to start this podcast because I do like the aspect of being able to kind of be in someone's ear on the same level that I can talk to them on YouTube, because sometimes we don't always have time to watch videos, and the blog was kind of the same thing. I wanted to niche down. I didn't want it to be about everything like how my YouTube channel is, because my YouTube channel, I had to have it about everything or I would get burnt out. I wouldn't have fun with it anymore. But with a podcast and a blog, I can kind of niche down and kind of talk about some things that I'm actually very passionate about. It's almost like journaling for me. You know, that's really my passion here. And honestly, I could just take you guys back. I've always wanted to have a radio show. Just honest, all truth and God. I have always wanted to have a radio show. I actually wrote a small blog post about that. Originally, I wanted to have a radio station when I was younger, maybe around 12-ish. And, you know, that was back when you could, I guess, get the little radio thing. I'm not really sure. I didn't look into it. But when I got older, podcasts became a big thing. So I figured, you know, why not? But my biggest thing was, what the heck am I going to talk about? I don't want to get on here. I can't be like a radio station like that. I just wanted to kind of have a talk show, maybe play a little music in the background. And podcasts, I realized, would make that an easier thing. Never looked into it until about a few months ago. And I finally said, you know what, I'm going to do it. And originally I was going to start the podcast first. Made sure I set up everything for the podcast. I even was going to start my podcast with just my Apple headset that comes with the phone. And I figured, you know, I'll start off there, and then a few episodes down the road, I'll just go ahead and I'll get myself a real microphone. Well, my husband decided that he would help me along in that way. And for Christmas, he got me a microphone. And it came the beginning of January. So I was going to start immediately because, you know, if he went through all that trouble to get me the microphone, he saw that I wanted to really start this. He does that. He sees when I want to do something, and he, you know, he supports me in it and finds a way to make me, you know, official in some form. And I do the same for him. So that's just like a little why I wanted to start this podcast. Hopefully, you know, I'm really trying to inspire others and show others that they are not alone in this, because I know that was like a big thing for me. One of my, you know, first podcasts, or one of my first blog posts, was about just that, about feeling alone in just my space of where I am right now. You know, a lot of people are trying to grow and, you know, while they have children. A lot of people, one thing that always bothered me, a lot of people think that your life kind of stops when you have kids. And in some form, it's not that it stops, it slows down a bit. I have to agree that it definitely slows down. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it can't be slow forever, and it can't be stopped forever. And if you let it stop forever, you'll lose yourself, and you'll find yourself waking up 35 years old with 2, 3 kids, realizing that you never accomplished your dreams. Now, something similar like that happened to me, but I was a little bit younger, because I always tell people I'm a little bit of an old soul. I tell people this all the time. I've always felt like an old soul since a child, and that just means that I am not the same age I am, chronologically. I am a little older mentally in a form. I had to grow up a little bit quicker on top of the fact when I had kids. But like I said, I was already an old soul there. So when I hear people talk, they often say basically like, when your kids grow up, you can travel the world, and you know, when your kids are this age, you can do this, and you know, when you don't have kids, you know, when your kids are older or whatever, you'll be able to do more. And it's like, why is it that we never speak on doing these things with our kids, traveling with our children, traveling with our family? Not saying that's easy. Yeah, I would have loved to have been jet setting about at 20 something years old, but that wasn't my reality, and I'm not going to sit here and harp on it and seem like, you know, bitter over it and wait until my kids are 20 years old and have their own families. I want my kids to experience those things when they're young too. Then when they get older, they can go off and experience it at 20, 30 years old, if, you know, until they want to have children and do the same. You know, kids need these experiences as well. I was brought up not traveling per se the world, but I most definitely was brought up traveling about the United States a little bit here and there. I've lived a few different states. So I am a fan of traveling. I learned, you know, you travel with your family. Nothing wrong with that. And one day I woke up and I was about 22 years old, and I had about she was about 3 years old, 2 or 3 years old. And I realized that I basically hadn't done the things that I wanted to do because I let my life slow down almost to a screeching halt. I didn't pursue anything that I wanted to pursue because I only focused on providing for my family. Now, there is nothing wrong with providing for your family. There's nothing wrong with wanting to only provide for your family. That is some people's absolute dream, and that is beautiful. But for me, I wanted to provide for my family while pursuing my dreams, and I just let it go to the wayside. I have blog posts, and I'll link all the blog posts that I spoke about in this podcast so you all can get a more elaborate view on what I mean. So it just kind of led me to kind of feel empty inside. Like I just basically wasn't doing what I needed to be doing for myself or my family. And that's when my journey began. I was about 22, 23 years old, and I decided that there's some things that needed to change. So being, working full time, having a toddler, taking her to school, trying to take care of the house and things like that, I did find it a big struggle to try and sew, to try and, I was doing YouTube at that time for a short while. I got burnt out, and I did go back to school. I went back to school for a little bit, and I was so burnt out. I actually, the second year, I did get through about 3 semesters, and that third semester didn't do so well. So, because again, I was just doing way too much, putting too much on my plate, and I was pushing myself in several different directions. So that wasn't a good idea. And, I realized that later on. My mind shifted a little bit later on when I decided to watch The Secret. I was about 26 at that time because I was about 25 at that time. It was a few years ago from now. And I watched The Secret, and this wasn't the first time I had watched The Secret. And it resonated with me all over again in a different way because my mom brought me up on actually those same teachings, and I thought she was crazy. Not in the sense of like, oh, Mom, this is ridiculous, but it was like to the fact that she was almost too confident, too optimistic about it. And I didn't know how to take it at the time. But watching it for that, second or third time, I realized that I was just overcome with what it all meant all over again. And it was solidified in me. So I started pursuing a lot more. And I decided that I was going to take this more seriously. I made sure I buckled down. I started rereading all my books again. And, any self-help book I could get my hand on. I discovered I've always read ebooks. I was downloading ebooks on my iPod. If anybody remembers those old not click wheel, the little one, the touch wheel iPods, I taught myself in 2006 how to download ebooks on there, and I used to read ebooks on my iPod. So I've always been a little bit of a bookworm. My mom kind of did that to me by, I was homeschooled, and she would always make me read certain books. Never really novels too much. I didn't read too many novels, but like a lot of business books, self-help books. She used to take me to business meetings with her. So I was brought up in all of that. So it kind of made it easier for me to kind of like switch back over to that. And that might be why I kind of wanted to pursue what I'm pursuing right now. So I decided, to make that shift. I was a very negative internally. In my own head, I was negative to myself, but to everyone else, I was the positive person. That's the person you go to when you want to talk about this and you want a positive view on that. But inside my head, I had so much self-doubt. It was just clouding everything I wanted to do with myself. So that was just a big thing for me. And, trying to build anything from the ground up, trying to understand social media, trying to market myself, trying to get myself out there, I noticed the little bit that I did do when I first started getting back out into fashion design and sewing and pushing myself out there in social media, I realized that I actually was getting somewhere. It wasn't fast, it wasn't blowing up, but the first time I started back posting things on my IG account, within a few weeks, I was actually welcomed onto a art showcase that I had actually been trying to get onto for, it must have been, I think, 3 or 4 years at that time. And I was just overwhelmed, and preparing for this art showcase to display my fashion designs, I came back home and was so burnt out, I literally quit for the rest of the year. Unintentionally, of course. But it was just so much that I was like, I don't know if I can handle this. Then I slowly started back up the next year. And then that's when I introduced myself to just kind of pushing myself back into YouTube, trying to find passive ways of income, as you know, because I'm still working full time and I still want to be with my kids. So I'm trying to figure out that balance. And so that's where we are today. I figure that, I am my own niche. I have to find the parents that are doing exactly the same thing that I want to do and to inspire the ones that are trying to be where I aspire to be to as well, or, however you want to say it. There's going to be some ups and downs in that. There's going to be some things that don't work out. There's going to be other things that do work out. Now, the reason why I wanted to harp on the fact that I wanted to talk to parents that are building businesses, because there is a different aspect that comes to it. Because a lot of people out here, if you don't have kids, that's fine. But if you're trying to build a business, you can stay up until 2 o'clock in the morning. And what do you have to worry about in the morning is getting your morning coffee and driving to work. When you have kids, that same amount of time that you have, that you get off of work and you come home, you have to get your kids ready for bed, you have to give them dinner, you have to, help them out if they're sick. When I was sewing for that fashion show, I had a 6-month-old on my a 6-month-old that was attached to me. She was breastfed and she was, on demand, and she just was literally on me all the time. And she was a baby, so it's not like I could just shove her over or give her to her father. It didn't work like that. So it was a different aspect, a different thing, a different headspace I was in. So I wanted to really connect with those and speak on all of the aspects of not only building a business, but building a business with a family and all the in-betweens. So it's not as easy. It takes a lot more to actually get things done in the long run. So I'm going to start interviewing families. I have a few interviews lined up already. So make sure y'all make sure y'all listen to the next episodes. I'm going to have a lot of amazing people on here. Now, if you're listening to this and you are one of those families out there that are building a business and raising a family and really trying to find your balance, maybe you have, maybe you haven't, I would love to have you on the show. And I would love you to email me at raisingbosses@gmail.com to be on my podcast. If you know anyone in that same space, please feel free to email in for them. Let them know my email and have them email in as well. As well, if you have any questions, if you want to, talk about anything specifically, you can actually call in at 321-355-2641. Everything will be in the show notes for you. You can call in, leave a message. You can even text message that number. Just let me know. Just say, hey, Raising Bosses, and your message, and I will feature it on the show as our questions or your email as well. As I close out this podcast, I just wanted to go ahead and just reiterate that I hope to inspire families out there that are trying to raise families and build businesses, as well as I want to connect with those that are doing just that. And I really appreciate you guys for listening to this first podcast. Go ahead and make sure you subscribe, and y'all have a wonderful day. Bye.